Hi.
Hi, we're live again.
Tonight.
So I'm Michelle. I'm a transition coach. I have
Tom, physical preparation coach.
Aimee, health and wellness coach.
And Bryan, holistic healer.
You guys have your phone out.
Yes,
We tagged us in a video.
Again, let me just remind you again. Last month we talked about how tech savvy they are. So every time we do this, please expect a little delay because people will be.
I don't know. Do we do anything?
It didn't show up.
No,
We're tagged, so it's
they're
good.
tagged.
It's good. All right.
Perfect.
Oh.
So tonight our topic is how to
It's
finish
there.
big for the year and also for the decade.
It is a decade.
Mine's not.
It's a decade. It's a decade already. It's a decade, Tom.
I know. I
Yeah.
thought about that. It's going to be 2020.
I know.
Hindsight is 2020.
Okay, there we go.
That's scary.
It is.
That's something. Well, so I'd like to start by helping everyone to understand, like, what does it mean to finish big? What does it mean to finish big? Who wants to go first?
Tom.
Tom does. Yeah, Tom looks like he wants
I would
to.
love to go first. Well, I think that's a question that everyone has to answer themselves, to be honest. But reflecting over 10 years, one of the biggest things that I realize is that as human beings, we get really focused on the short term and what we're either doing or not doing in the day or the week. And we rarely look 10 years in advance to kind of plan out where we're going to be. And we rarely look back 10 years to kind of give ourselves credit for where we've come from. So finishing with a bang, I think involves a lot of reflection, especially now that it's November and, you know, the year's going to end in a little more than 6 weeks.
Mhm.
And really appreciating everything that you have done and then just continue that upward trend into the next decade.
Okay. So in other words, if I understand you correctly, finishing big really means looking ahead of time and having that plan for the next 10 years, really, or doing a reflection of, you know, what has happened within the last 5-10 years and using that and carrying into the future.
You summed it up very well.
Okay.
To put it more simply, if you plan 10 years ahead of time, you can accomplish a lot more than waiting until 6 weeks before the year is going to end to decide what big bang you want to create.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So big is more like a big vision of your life within the next 10 years.
Well, I'm generalizing. I mean, for some people, they might have something in mind that could be more spectacular and literally amazing wow moment or event that's going to happen. I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. What about you, Aimee?
Well, I want to comment on one thing that Tom said, and then I'll share with my thoughts. So I loved everything that he said, but one thing that I really like that I think is so important is we do not celebrate our successes enough. And so a lot of times we may be planning forward, but we're not reflecting back. And it's so important to do that. In fact, I didn't myself. I didn't even realize it was the end of the decade until just a few months ago. And when I was thinking about how I wanted to finish the decade, I started reflecting on how I started this decade. And it was like, whoa, very, very dramatic difference between how I started this decade and how I'm finishing it. And so it's important. It's important to stop and to celebrate all of our wins, whether they're tiny or big, because it's all the tiny ones that lead up to the big ones, by the way. But we're always putting off celebrating until we get that big victory. But we don't ever get to the big victory because we lose motivation or we get distracted or sidetracked. But if we can celebrate all the little tiny wins, because that's really what leads to the big victory, we'll stay focused. So good job on that, Tom. I think, like, for me personally, and this is just this year, because I think ending with a big bang could look different year to year, and even decade to decade. So just for me, for this moment, ending big for me is really about who I am being. And this started, I was trying to get clarity on this, I would say over the last couple months. And it started with a conversation with Tom where I was very focused on my to-do list, all the things I wanted to accomplish and do by the end of the year. And he pointed out, that's kind of lower level thinking, and it's not really about what we're doing, but what we're becoming. And from there, that idea then has grown into not what we're becoming, but who we're being, because we have it within us, right? It's like that Buddhist story. There's different versions of it, right? Where the Buddha is like covered either in brown paint or clay, and the monks don't know that it's actually a golden Buddha, so no one really pays attention to it until one day someone sees like the crack in the clay, or one of the monks is dusting it off and some of the brown paint comes off and the gold it shows through, and then as they clean it up and get it off, they realize it's actually a golden Buddha. That's us, perfection and greatness and wisdom and courage. All those things are within us. It's not that we have to go and develop those things or become those things. It's more about just getting rid of all of the clay from our exterior, so that the gold that's already in us shine. So for me, this year and this decade is really about being. Who am I being, and less about what I'm doing.
Wow.
I beat that.
Yeah. That's beautiful.
Incredible.
Yeah, incredible.
Like who can top that? I don't know.
Good night, everyone.
Right? I think Aimee just summed it up, and we can all go home.
Yeah, really. Wow.
Bryan is in the tough spot now.
Well, yeah, I'm not even gonna touch that one, because that was so articulate and that was very beautiful. We are all golden Buddhas, and we all have this great potential. I mean, I know for me, and thinking about how we're going to end, how do you want to end this decade? And I think the truth is, I think we all have plans, right? We all have this vision of who we think we are, who we want to be, but we think we don't deserve it. So much like the golden Buddha that's covered, we know that we're that golden Buddha, but we sometimes don't allow ourselves to shine. And so in order to get to that point, I think, the end of the decade is really a important point to, it's a great time to let all of that shit go that's been covering up your shine. Let it go. It's be who you know you are, and allow yourself to be who you know you are. It's time to shit or get off the pot. That's it. Like, done. Let's get it going. Clean off your own paint or your own clay. Let's do it. There's no one is going to do it for you. So I think it's taking responsibility, it's taking ownership, and knowing this is who I am and this is who I'm going to be. And so it's letting go of the past and making that plan for the future. That's what I think it is.
Yeah.
Love it.
So I think
What about you? Sorry.
So I think to sum up what you all have shared, in terms of what does it mean to finish big, really means that you let go of your past, whatever that had happened, step into who you truly are, and having a clear vision of who you want to be within the next 5-10 years, having that vision of where you want to be.
Yes.
That really sum up for the big.
Yes.
And so for me, finishing big means a lot, and it's basically you sum it up. But I think one of the piece that I feel is really important is in the letting go part, because I think a lot of us actually hold on to what no longer serve us, and whether it's emotion, things that doesn't, new habit, old habit that didn't serve us well. It's about letting go of that, and behind that, it triggers a lot of fear of letting it go, losing it. It's something that we're not comfortable. Now we have to say goodbye to it. It's about forgiving ourselves what had happened or what hadn't happened. So if you didn't go to the gym this year, or you didn't start a new diet, then it's about forgiving ourselves and allowing ourselves to say, okay, it's okay to have those feelings, and it's okay to accept those feelings for what we're feeling. So I think for me, finishing big is also about forgiveness.
Absolutely. Self-forgiveness.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
self-forgiveness. So then I wanted to come back to the question of, who do we think that we are? And I think a lot of people, maybe the audience can even share this, a lot of time you find people, well, do you know who you are? Or when you're in a conflict situation, you would say, I'm just being me. So what does that mean of being who we are? How do we find who we are?
Wow, that's such a great question.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'll kind of jump in on this one. I think that the only way we can find out who we really are is by allowing us to have that space, right? And to really giving yourself that time for self-reflection. Because more often than not, we define ourselves by our history or by our injuries or by our limitations.
Mm-hmm.
And, we think, oh, I'm that person. And so we've put ourselves into a category. I say this all the time with my clients is, we're not characters in a movie.
Yeah.
Who you were this morning does not mean that's who you are this evening. It's a choice. You can choose to be whoever the hell you want to be and do it. You're not forced to behave or to be or to think in any way. It's all a choice. And once you recognize it's a choice, there are no obligations. There's nothing that you have to do. It's all a choice.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of where it comes to, really finding out who you are as a person is allowing yourself to reflect on it and then to make those choices accordingly.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Wow. But I think so for some people, that is so exciting, right? And liberating, which has been my experience. I love that. But for some people, that feels very scary and uncomfortable, and they're not ready to do that. And so they stay busy. They keep themselves really busy so they don't have time to have quiet time with themselves to do that reflection. Yet then they are frustrated with the lack of meaning and purpose and fulfillment in their life.
Mm-hmm.
So they're in kind of like this vicious cycle that keeps feeding itself.
So in other words, they're avoiding.
Exactly. And
They're
we
avoiding.
avoid in a lot of different ways.
And I think part of it is because finding your true self, it is scary. It means that you are peeling away all the masks that you've been wearing in a situation where you may not share your feelings to someone, and all of a sudden you actually have to stand in front of someone and share that feeling, share that true anger, sharing that true resentment, or sharing that compassion for the other person or the love for that person. And that in itself, we don't know how it's going to take and react by the other person. So of course it triggers a lot of anxiety and uncomfortableness. So we go back in our shell and just kind of protect ourselves around it.
Right.
Avoiding.
Yeah, we're pretty good at that.
Yeah.
I have some coaching clients, and I get this because I've definitely been there, so I don't share it in judgment, but just to kind of further the point that, as much as I try to help steer their thinking and reflection on the emotional relationship they have with food, when we get to maybe a relationship like with a parent or a spouse or a sibling where it gets uncomfortable, they will immediately shift back to, well, I just need a diet plan, Aimee. Like I'm just kind of, and it's like, so this is their way to avoid. And so they'll swing back in. And this is a pattern I've seen, I would say almost 100% of the time. They'll swing back into like, I just want to focus on a diet. Just, give me a diet, or I found this diet, I'm just going to go with this. And that's the way that they stay busy and consumed, with their energy to avoid what is the root cause of some of their health and wellness issues. So, and it can be painful and it can feel scary, but I'll tell you, for someone who has done a lot of that in recent years, it's like, so Tom and I, for my birthday, we went with some friends, we went skydiving. And what I discovered from that experience is that the anticipation of getting out onto the wing of that plane, deep breathe all the time, and then somersaulting off, the anticipation was far scarier than the actual experience. And the actual experience was actually liberating and empowering. Like we're already planning to go at the end of the year. That's how we're finishing the year with that big bang.
As the ball drops.
As the ball drops, we'll be jumping out of a plane.
Landing in Times Square.
Yes.
Oh, wow. You guys are going big. Okay.
Onto the tower.
And that'll be a bang.
You know what? Bryan and I will be down on the bottom of the Times Square
Yes.
without mattress. It will be.
Oh no, I'll have a beer in my hand. Knock yourselves out. I think these are the choices you want to make. I support you.
I'll be at the bottom. I'll be at the bottom. But it's the same thing, you know. I will tell you, and again, for someone who has made a lot of changes in a few years, it can feel very scary. It can feel painful. It can feel like the sacrifice is too great initially, just like jumping out of a plane. But once you take that step onto the wing and you somersault off, you realize, oh, it was worth every bit of it. And guess what? It wasn't that sacrifice, and it wasn't as hard, and it wasn't as scary as I expected it to be. It's actually really, really amazing when you take control of your life. You get into the driver's seat.
So I think Bryan had mentioned that it's a choice that we make of who we want to be. And Aimee pretty much gave a great example in terms of, you know, that anticipation is usually bigger than what it appears to be. That fear is always bigger than what we thought it would be. But it's the moment of deciding to jump, to take a leap. So in your experience, how do you encourage someone to take that leap?
That's a good question, because for most people, they have to hit a point where they've had enough. And sometimes that point can be really extreme and they never hit it. Really, it kind of goes back to the question before, and that is just encouraging someone to become more self-aware. And then to take full responsibility for who they are now and everything they do. And then understanding that human behavior is sometimes influenced by the norms and what we've done before, not because necessarily we've chosen it. And then having the courage to understand that you're not perfect. And it's okay if you have, you know, acted in ways that are not necessarily what you want to do, and then being able to decide where you want to go.
Anyone want to add?
For me, you know, and we all know this, and people watching know this, that you can't force someone to change. You can't, you know, you can maybe try to influence or inspire, but really, right, it's our own individual decision. We have to want to do it. And so I find for me is I just be me. And I share quite a bit. I don't even realize I guess I'm way more open and vulnerable just because that's who I am. And I would rather have a deep discussion with you about like what we're having tonight than to talk about the weather. Like, great, okay, we'll talk about the weather, but like that, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I had a complete stranger about a week ago I bumped into and had just a very brief, like 10-minute encounter with him. And he was like, you just made my day. Like, this is the most amazing conversation I've had all month. And it was just me being me. So what I'm going with that is that as I just am me and I am open and have conversations with whoever, and I share where I'm at in my own life and my own progress and my own journey, I seem to attract people who are looking for something. They're looking for a change. They're ready, or they're on that path to be ready to do something big with themselves. And then once they're ready, right, then it's much easier to work with them than to try to find someone and, you know, want them to change more than they want it for themselves.
For sure. And so and that's such a beautiful thing. You're 100% correct. I agree with you 100%. Is that when you make those choices to be your authentic self, right? You're choosing these things. You're choosing to be open with everyone. You're choosing to be vulnerable with everyone. You're choosing to be these things. You are allowing your gold in Buddha to shine. And that attracts other people. They want to know what they can see the gold in your words, in your motions, in the way you move your body. People can see that. People can feel the energy radiating out from your body. And so they come to you, and they also want to know, what is this? This is really cool. I want to be a part of this. Because they also want to be authentic. And I think all of us really want deep down we want to be our true, authentic selves, but we've been conditioned not to. Whether it's, you know, whatever has happened in your life, and, you know, viewers and ourselves and everyone included, you know, it's been a, you know, a lot of us have been suppressed, right? Our true selves have been suppressed until we've been able to make those choices for ourselves, to let our real selves shine. And this is what, you know, you were talking about now, is allowing your real, authentic self to shine out. And when people feel that and they see that, they can't help but be attracted to it like a bug light. They just, what is happening? You just changed this guy's day because he heard you being authentic. And, you know, you could have chosen to talk about the weather. You could have that could have been a choice.
Yeah, but it was like 90 degrees, sunny. Like, what else is new in California?
Well, yeah, exactly. But you made a very conscious choice, and I think a lot of times we choose to stay safe.
Yeah.
And that's where we're not honoring ourselves, and so we don't allow ourselves to get to that, you know, that bang we're talking about end of the year, because we choose to be safe. The crab is in the shell.
Yeah.
Yes.
So.
Okay. I love it. And for those of you who's tuning in just now, we're talking tonight's topic. This is a wrap session. So we have this monthly now where we bring relevant discussion to you so that you can actually participate and also to watch later on. So if you're watching this video later, the topic tonight is really how to finish our year with a big bang, or, you know, how to finish our decade with something big. And I want to kind of reflect back in terms of all the things that we have just talked about. And, you know, for me, you know, stepping into that true self was a struggle, because I was at a point where I was not having that awareness of who I am. So I was trying to follow all the pattern of the social standard, you know, how a woman should look, how a woman should dress, you know, what's a typical height, what's a typical weight, all of that standard of defining who I am. But when I peel away all that and stepping into it, was very comfortable to be in a shell, to protect myself, to not be seen. But once you peel that away, it takes awareness, for sure, that self-awareness that I'm not happy, I want to change. And it also takes a lot of being vulnerable, sharing my feelings, sharing my emotion to everyone, and also to realize that there's mud cover me that came from my belief that didn't work, and peeling that away, that's where the golden Buddha starts showing up.
So what did now it's my turn, because you're so great at asking the questions and not moderating. So what was the point for you when you realized you were ready for a change? Give us, like, what was your life, what did your life look like? How did you feel about your life, and what was the turning point for you?
So for me, it was, you know, I had a great job. I have a great job. It pays well, good benefit. I have a loving and family and friends. I have a circle of friends who care about me. I have everything that everyone can dream of, right? I felt safe. There's nothing wrong with my life. But then deep down inside, you know, that tickling feeling of something is missing, but you can't quite pinpoint what is that something. So you kept searching. So you read books, you listen to tapes, and you just keep going circle in terms of finding what is missing piece that will complete the whole picture. Is it a significant other that I need to look through? Is it a partner I need to find? Something is missing in order to complete me. And when you go through that vicious cycle of keep searching out there, you keep going into a situation where you're not happy. You go home. I went home, and there's a moment where I wake up crying, or there's a moment where I feel depressed for no reason. And it was like, for no reason at all, I'm depressed and I'm not happy. And when you're in that moment long enough, some of the idea that comes to your head, you start to believe it. You're not good enough. You're not smart enough. You're not pretty enough. That voice, that inner voice that we all share. And when you're constantly hearing it, it's very draining emotionally, physically. I start gaining weight. You know, I start eating crap. I start not taking care of myself. All of that came, and then finally I was at the bottom. And then that was a moment where I felt I'm in a shithole. Excuse my language, but there's no better way to describe it. I was in a shithole, and
I thought you said a shell.
No, in a shithole.
Okay, yeah, I got it. Like, you have to apologize for the shell.
So then that was a moment where I started looking, well, I need to do something about this. And it was in that moment that the light turned on. Like, oh, okay, I have a choice. Mm-hmm. It was in that moment I realized that, life could be different of how I feel, how I look, how I want to go about doing things. It could be a complete different view if I were to make a choice. I didn't know what that choice would be. It was a turning point where I start to discover what is possible by realizing that I have a choice.
Because that's where you take back your power.
That's where my power
came
back.
When you take responsibility and you realize you get to choose. Mm-hmm. We're no longer victims to our circumstances. Mm-hmm. That's where it all begins.
Beautiful.
And I think that's where the audience can probably relate to is if you're finding yourself or someone that you know who keeps on going into that vicious cycle of not being happy and keep looking for something and we're just going through the year of repeating itself, and almost every year we're looking for something different, but yet we go back to the same pattern.
Yes.
Every time we look, then it's time to start thinking about, well, what could be different?
So what I heard you share, and I think that, I can totally relate. I know Tom can relate, I guess Bryan can relate, and probably all the viewers, is that when we find ourselves not happy. So it's interesting how you described it, because some of us didn't have that perfect home life and perfect job. And so on the exterior, it seemed like you had it all, and it did bring you a sense of safety, which is interesting that even though it felt safe, you still you weren't fulfilled and happy. Because I think a lot of us sacrifice. I hope you guys are all listening. I hope a lot of us sacrifice our happiness and our fulfillment for safety. Yes. Right? But even though you were safe with this great home life and this great job, you still were lacking something. And so like all of us, we begin to look to external ways to fill that lack. Right? So, and it can be different for everyone. Your clients, you probably see the whole scope. Mine is usually with food. Yours is maybe exercise and whatever your clients and your, you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't matter. There's all these external ways that we try to fill that lack. And at some point we have to realize it's not working. It's not working. And in that moment of realization, we take back our power and we realize we have a choice to do something different. And that's the other thing that I love what you said, is that a lot of times we do the same, we fall back to the same patterns and we keep the same behavior, hoping for a different outcome and a different result. And we all know what the definition of insanity is, right? Right, is doing the same thing over and over again, hoping for a different outcome. So thank you for sharing that, Michelle. You're super inspirational.
Thank you.
You really are.
Yeah. Tom, anything to reflect?
No, I don't actually. I'm sorry.
I'm
actually, I'm listening to you all and thinking about it as well. Well, yeah, I guess I could add to that. Just like you have a choice to change and make your life what you want it to be, before you realize that, you are making a choice not to as well. So understand that it's not like all of a sudden you are given a choice, and the choice is the positive is a choice and the negative was a result of circumstance. Everything that happened to you is your choice, and if you decide to do nothing, that's your choice too, and that's okay. So just understand that you have that ability.
Yeah.
And I know you mean this, but I'm just going to verbalize this for people that are listening. That obviously, like, if you experience trauma, you're a victim of trauma, that's not your choice. So I know what you mean, but we're just kind of putting that out there. There are things that do happen to us, and that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the kinds of experiences that we have on a normal day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
Well, bad things happen to everyone, and some are bad or worse than others. That's true, but you do have a choice on how you respond. And some of the choices are harder to make. Yes. So I don't want to make anyone feel, bad about themselves that has experienced, things that I haven't, or that are worse than what I've experienced. But the simple truth is that we all do, even though not all experiences are created equal. And then, going back to the symbolism of mud on the Buddha, sometimes the mud is what makes you really great. You don't have to be perfect. So when I say self-aware, I mean understanding that your little quirks are actually awesome, and that's why you're great. You don't have to recognize them and say I'm going to change them. You can say you can make them a positive and make them a skill.
I love what Tom had just shared, because earlier this afternoon I was working with a client, and then she was making a comment about how to choose between the two options, and she made a comment about how, oh, if I chose the other way, it would be so bad, right? And I think that's that really brings up the issue of, well, you have the choice, but it's not about judging which one is good, which one is bad. A choice is a choice.
Exactly.
There's nothing good or bad about the choice itself. It's how we define it, how we give meaning to it.
Yep.
So if this is a moment of life where you are probably more comfortable and more safe, and staying where you are is best fitted for yourself, then that's where you need to be, and just allowing the time to go through and just trusting that process of going through that journey. And every moment is a learning process. So even though if you chose to stay and doing things the way that you've been doing, that's okay. There's no good or bad. It's just a choice.
I love that. Absolutely.
Well, and I think it's the choices, and whether the results are, let's reword it and say positive or negative, right? You still learn something, and you don't have to choose to do that again. You don't have to choose to learn the same lesson again. The next time that lesson comes up, you can choose differently and learn something new. And that's where, real growth, real change, real healing happens, is when we start making different choices for the same circumstances. And that's, going back to what we're talking about, that mud covering the golden Buddha can also preserve that gold for a while, but at some point it does got to come off, and make that choice to remove it and let yourself shine. I think so many of us are afraid of who we really are, and we're afraid of shining because we've defined ourselves by those traumas. We've identified as, I am this person or that person. And so, and this is when we really are honoring our own spirituality, when we're honoring our own authenticity, is when we start making the right choices. And we start making those choices that make us happy. And we wake up happy, and we go to bed happy, and we live and we work happy. That means you're doing it right. That's all.
I think doing it right also has a lot of, it's really subjective, right? So what's being right for Tom, it may not be right for me. So we may have the same choice to make, but you may choose differently than I do. And there's really nothing about what you chose is any worse than what I choose, any better. And one of the saying that I really love is, there's no good day or bad day. There's only good day and learning days. Right? So every day we can learn something from those moments, the challenges or the struggle, whatever you want to call it, the obstacle that's just standing in front of us. And it's learning. What do we learn? We're learning about ourselves. Right? So that's what we're learning. We're learning everything about ourselves. How do we handle the situation? How do we react to the situation? How can we show up differently in that same situation should it happen again?
Absolutely. Yeah, and if I can add to that, I think, we learn who we are by doing those things that that make us uncomfortable. A lot of times when we're talking about chakra centers, we talk about those energy centers in the body. We talk about the sacral chakra, which is all about governing our identities. Right? Whenever I have clients who have this situation, I pose to them this question. And I'll ask them to tell me a food they don't like. And usually within seconds, they'll tell me something. I don't like that. And then I'll ask them, tell me a food you do like. And the conversation can go on for hours. So what we hear from that, we can take out of that is they've learned very quickly, I am the person that doesn't like X, Y, or Z. And we've learned so much by doing those things we don't like. So when we make those choices that maybe have quote unquote negative impact on us, we've learned so much more than by doing those things that bring us joy. They're great. And, you know, it wasn't difficult. It was easy and everything feels great. And that's great. Joy is great, but you didn't really learn much.
Yeah.
So we learned so much more about ourselves by making those quote unquote mistakes or negative things. And that's where we really learn who we are. So go for it. Make all the bad choices you want. Learn.
Blow it up.
Blow it up. Learn about yourself.
Anything to add, Aimee?
No, I think this is good. I think about this in terms of, again, you know, what the people that I work with, the space that I'm in, and that's one of the things. That's one of the first things we try to do, and Tom included with our clients, is helping them understand, like, get rid of the good food, bad food list. Food is just neutral. It's just food. Yeah. And, you know, for some people, their bodies do better on a vegan diet, and some people their bodies do better on a paleo diet, and, you know, so on and so forth. It's really there is not a right diet that everyone should be on. It's about learning, you know, to pay attention to their body, do a little experimenting, and find the foods that their body does best with, and then that's the right thing for them. So everything that you guys are saying, I'm just thinking about it, you know, in those terms. And then, I remember I had a client who she was like, it was like confession time, right? It was like coaching, like every coaching session was like, oh, you're going to hate me today, Aimee. And I'm like, you know, I went through the Del Taco drive-through, and I meant to just order one taco, and all of a sudden I had like a 12-pack, and, you know, and it's like, no, this is not about confession time. Yeah. You are still the person you were before you went through the drive-through. You made a choice. How did you feel? What was the outcome? What would you do differently next time? Yeah. Let's stop beating ourselves up over it. Let's just learn from it. what are the takeaways, and move on. Which goes back to your original point at the very beginning, as ending on a high note, is a lot of it has to do with forgiving, self-forgiveness. Yeah.
There's no good choice or bad choice. You made a choice, and you got to forgive yourself for how you chose. Yeah. And moving forward, I always think of, you know, us on a timeline, right? So we're in a straight line, and you're here standing in the middle, and you have the future, you have the back, you know, past that was already past, and you have your future. So you're standing in the middle. You have a choice to keep looking back and feeling regret, feeling all the anger and resentment that you have for your past, versus if you were to let that go and start focusing on what you can do now, you can create so much better things, or so much more things for the future.
Yeah, I had a thought about the Buddha analogy again.
Okay. Do share.
But it's good. It's real good.
We can't wait.
A gold Buddha is worth the same whether it's covered in mud or it's shiny. It's just that when it's shiny, you're waiting for others to see what it's worth.
Oh, boom.
Yikes, yeah.
Wow.
Mic drop.
Mic drop.
That was beautiful. That was beautiful.
And to follow that up, that's been a big part. So at the beginning, we were talking about how we're going to end, you know, and so my focus for this year is really being intentional about who I'm being. And that has been probably my biggest takeaway, is that my flaws are just as beautiful as my strengths, and really just learning to love and embrace everything about me.
Love it. You, Bryan?
Yeah, I'm still reeling on Tom's comment.
I know, right? Whoa!
No, it's really. I know it's and it's because it's 100% accurate, and you know, everything's right. I think what we're all talking about, you know, we're all talking about the same thing. It's about, you know, letting your value shine, letting that out, letting your own. Forgive yourself for maybe those choices that you think were poor choices. Forgiving yourself. And just moving the fuck on. I'm sorry. It's just like we don't define ourselves by our poor choices. Oh shit. Oh.
It's not regulated by the FCC, so we're good.
So okay.
Every month we're gonna be.
We just lost 10 viewers right there. Oh,
we're gonna be fine, Bryan.
That's one of my flaws that I embrace. I cuss. Oh well. So I forgot what I was saying.
It was about Santa.
So I forgive myself. Oh, that's right. Yeah. Well, I forgive myself for being a cusser, because I am, and oh well. And I embrace it, and that's part of my authenticity.
Boom.
So
you
that's
go.
how I'm going to end the year, by honoring my authenticity. So I might end the new year with saying like, "Fuck yeah, motherfuckers." I might say that. That's who I am.
Times Square while we jump.
While you guys jump, I'm like, wow, look at these.
Whoa. So for me, I would like to finish my year by really, I really truly enjoy, now that I'm like kind of stepping into a different zone of how to be, and really truly understanding of what does it mean to be myself. I'm going to finish this year by just owning myself.
Mm-hmm.
However I'm showing up, however I'm feeling, I'm going to share it. I'm going to be vulnerable, and I'm going to embrace all the possibility that lies ahead of me.
Hell yeah.
I love that.
Beautiful.
Congratulations.
That's beautiful.
So I have a thought before, I don't know how much more time we have, but I'm thinking about all the people, and this was me, a few years ago, where that's like, well, it's already November.
That's 13.
It's already November 13th. What's the point? I'm just going to check out till the end of the year and I'll start on January 1st. Right? A lot of people do that with their diets.
Oh, yeah.
But, and that's a choice. You could choose that. And that's one choice. But for those that want to choose differently, does it mean just because it's now November 13th and maybe we have not spent the year, focusing on goals or development or whatever, does that mean that it's just over? What's something that those sorts of people could do to end with a big bang?
So I'm thinking about in the line of challenge. So like personally coming from me, I would like to challenge our audience to really think about doing one scary thing that you have never thought about doing it before. One tiny, don't jump up, don't do the bungee jump, or don't do the what was
skydiving.
Don't do the skydiving.
I think bungee jumping is way scarier.
Me too, agreed.
Well, whatever
and more
it is,
dangerous.
it's just don't put yourself in danger. But I would like to challenge
They're on the
you
same realm to you.
to really step out of your comfort zone and do one scary thing that you always wanted to do, but you never had the guts to do it. So
Like
I would like don't skydive. So
Unless you want to.
I'm gonna challenge you doing that.
It's your choice.
What about you? What would you like to share with the audience and have them do?
Well, I think with, I'm going to take it to what I talk with clients. It doesn't have to be all or nothing. So it's okay to start with one step and then add as you go and just establish the new pattern that you want.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Aimee?
Yeah, both of those are great ideas. And I just want to say, I would just encourage people to just, like you said, just choose something. Just choose one thing, over the next 6 weeks that you would like to focus on. Set a goal and go for it. It doesn't have to be anything big. It can be very small. But for a lot of us who have gotten out of the habit of setting goals or even just having goals, and it doesn't even need to be a goal. In fact, I prefer the word commitment. Make a commitment to yourself for the next 6 weeks, and it could be as simple as whatever. I don't want to throw out any. It's different for everyone. But when you make a commitment to yourself and you become very focused and intentional on that, and you don't have to be perfect at it, by the way. Part of my story of losing 90 pounds, I share people that I probably had about 10 what I would say perfect days in that entire year. Meaning like my eating, I was eating intuitively and I was moving my body intuitively and my mindset was good. I probably had about 10 out of the 352. I always forget. How many days in a year?
365.
Oh, what's the 352 then?
There isn't.
You lost a few days.
There's 52 weeks in a year.
365 days in a year.
Okay, out of 365 days in a year. Okay, so let's bump up the
Your
10
year
to
is
12.
352. Well, for the rest of us.
I checked out at day 352 for like 13 days. I'm done.
It's vacation
done.
time.
Yes.
2 weeks, you earned it.
Anyway, perfect days. Yet I still, not only did I hit my goal, I actually went beyond. So my goal was 70 pounds and I went far beyond that. So just letting you know, people that are watching, make a commitment to yourself. Choose something small and stick with it, and know that every day does not have to be perfect in order to hit that goal. But when we do just those little small steps and we succeed, it is so inspiring. It builds our confidence. It gives us a taste of control, because we've made a choice and we've accomplished something. It doesn't have to be something big. Just go for that. End your year in an intentional way, in a small way, just because that's going to then set you up for a fabulous 2020.
Yeah. It's always about taking the baby steps first.
Yeah.
Right? Don't think about taking a leap. Take a baby step. What would be a baby step be?
And that becomes a big leap.
Yes.
I'll give you an example of a client. We ran a family health and fitness challenge over the summer, Tom and I, and this one mom on day one shared how frustrating mealtime was for her, because she was trying to spend time making these healthy meals for her family, and then all she got from her kids were complaint, and so that became like a power struggle where she was just like, shut up and eat your food and go to bed. It was just not a pleasant time. And that was one of many concerns she had. Remember that. But what we then did, she wanted to tackle like multiple challenges in the family during our 10 or 12 weeks that we had with them. But we encouraged her to do, and talking about baby steps, it was just, what's one or two things you could do to just make mealtime pleasant for you and pleasant for your children. And that one little baby step, I think, was a defining moment for their entire family, because week after week after week, the girls would even talk about how much more enjoyable dinner time was, and how they would try different vegetables that they didn't try before, and they wouldn't complain about it, because this was like a family focus to just not complain and, have an open mind, a growth mindset rather than a fixed mindset. And that became a very defining moment, just that little tiny baby step of just learning, finding a way to make mealtime a more pleasurable experience.
Yeah, perfect example.
That's beautiful. Yeah. And I think, that the key to that baby step, right, is to just taking that minute, that moment to embrace the stillness and really be honest with yourself. Check in with yourself and be honest, brutally honest, and really have that internal dialogue. Because I think, we talk about the busy and we talk about all these distractions and all these things that I think we get wrapped up in that, but really just taking that moment to really be honest, really embrace that authentic nature of who we are, and then understanding what it is that we really want without distraction.
Yeah.
And I will just follow that up, if you don't mind. Sorry to do so much talking, but when we ask ourselves powerful questions, we get powerful answers. And so it was a period of time of me reflecting that led to the changes that I've made over the last few years. And the one question that I was asking myself, and this is a great question for everyone, how have I just lived the last decade? And how do I want to live the next decade? So the question that I've been asked was, how have I lived the first half of my life on this planet, and how do I want to live the next half? Just that question alone will bring you, if you're able to get quiet, get still, do some journaling, can really be powerful. Really open you up to some really amazing things.
Absolutely.
And just be careful on what you say to yourself.
Yes.
Because you have to we say a lot of things to ourselves all the time. And instead of saying negative things about ourselves, ask ourselves more empowering questions. And when you Google, there's a list of empowering questions that you can ask yourself.
Or better yet, you could reach out to a coach that could coach you through that process, or connect with a spiritual healer who can guide you as well.
Absolutely.
And I know of a few if anyone needs recommendations.
And by the way, we're all available for private coaching. So those of you who need a little nudge towards the end of the year, we're always available for private coaching.
Or a shove, or a push,
Or a push.
Or a kick.
or a kick.
Or you can join us. You can watch
Or a
us
hug.
live.
Or a hug. Yeah.
You can always watch us live.
That's right.
You know,
So that's.
can I just
yes.
add a little bit? I
Of
think
course.
something that we are also lacking societally is kindness.
Yeah.
You know, I think we are really harsh on ourselves and we're really harsh on other people. So, you know, in this moment, this last part of the year where we're trying, or last part of this decade where we're trying to figure out what we want to do next, also keep in mind, approach that with kindness. Kindness to yourself and kindness to those around you. It doesn't, not everything has to have a hard edge.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yes. So that's wrap up. If you were to say one comment or recommendation or something that you would like to share with the audience, what would that be, Tom?
I feel like I've
He's
given
sharing
them a
that.
lot to think about, so I'm content with that. I don't have one thing. Apologies.
I feel the same. So I just am sending out blessings and of peace and health and happiness to all of you that are watching and listening for the end of the year.
And I'm going to end this with say, be kind to yourselves and let that shit go.
There you go.
And I am going to say that thank you for watching, and please make sure you tune in again next month. And we're having a topic every month where we do this rap session, and we'll bring you to live.
Cool.
Thanks for watching.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.